You're tuning in back on Nikon Live, our Facebook page or YouTube. Thank you for coming back. We hope you had a nice lunch too. And we're going to continue on with a very special panel discussion with three very influential photographers and artists on strategies for diversification of your business. Cliff came up with this one, and it's a great title, and I actually got through that. But we have three amazing people with us today. Julia Kelleher, all three Nikon ambassadors. Julia Kelleher, let's hear it for Julia.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tamara Lackey. Tamara like the camera.
Thank you.
Don't say Tamara, it's Tamara.
Thank you.
And a good friend of mine from Haddonfield, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, wherever you are, Cliff Mautner.
Very accurate.
Ah, Cliff.
All very celebrated photographers here at WPPI and have veterans of this show, and certainly people we've been working with for a long time, and three business owners, right? And that's what we're going to talk about today. So one at a time, starting with you, Julia, coming towards Cliff. Just talk a little bit about where you're from, what your business is, and maybe when you got started.
Yeah. Julia Kelleher from Bend, Oregon, which is a smallish town, middle of Oregon, mountain town, tourism area. And I've been in business since 2006, in Bend since 2009. So started establishing in a larger market in the Portland area, and then got engaged and fell in love and moved to a small town and had to start over again. Business is my passion. I teach business, of course, to a lot of other photographers, and diversification is so much a part of that. So I'm excited to be here. Of course, I photograph newborn babies, a little cute peanut up there on the screen, and of course have diversified into children and families and also commercial work as well. So it's kind of a natural progression, and I'm excited to talk about it.
Little nugget, Julia actually mentors me in broadcast journalism because you've actually been a broadcast journalist for many years.
For years. I was a morning anchor and meteorologist for several different TV stations, the last one being the ABC affiliate in Portland. So it's a different life.
I remember I met Tamara at a camera store way back when, and we immediately connected, and she ended up becoming a Nikon ambassador. I have a major man crush on her husband, Steve. But Tamara, where are you from, and when did you start in business?
First of all, my husband's watching, and he's melting because he feels unappreciated in life right now. Like being at home with the kids alone. This is a wonderful statement for him, so thank you. So I started my business about 17 years ago now. Professional photography studio. We do commercial work, like this photograph up here that I was lucky enough to shoot for Nikon, portraits, and I have associate photographers over the years, which has ebbed and flowed, focused on also weddings and headshots, etc. So in terms of a photography business, we've had a pretty diverse business.
And you've been, I mean, probably all three of you have been very diverse in the time I've known you and studying what you've done. You also just launched a program called Chasing Frames, right?
Chasing Frames,
you're going way away from photographing children into more journalistic type
Correct.
photography.
Yeah. I have a television show called Chasing Frames. You can see it at chasingframeshow.com. And it's all about using photography as a means to showcase people who are doing amazing things in the world, whether they're protecting our planet or rescuing those who are in need. And Nikon is a sponsor. And a lot of what we do in that is just kind of go along for the ride, see what people are doing, and capture it.
Mm-hmm. It's fabulous, by the way.
Mr. Mautner, my friend.
By the way, since when were you British? Went the opening?
I didn't British. I didn't go British. That's a failed attempt at British. But Haddonfield, New Jersey. If you didn't see Cliff's program before, it was phenomenal. But you started off as a photojournalist, right? And then you started a business. Talk about that.
Well, I started. I was a college kid, and I needed money. And I looked in an ad in a newspaper, and it said, "Award-winning weekly newspaper seeks photographer." It was 1982. I got my first newspaper job then. I was a junior in college, and 2 years later, I started working for the Philadelphia Inquirer. 15 years later, I got laid off from the Philadelphia Inquirer, started my wedding career, but it's probably easier for me to say what I haven't shot than what I have shot. Advertising agencies, corporate communications, clients consisting of everything from Subaru to Comcast. This past year, Epson working with Shaquille O'Neal. I just picked up a wonderful client named Gore-Tex, which we all know what Gore-Tex is. So it's very diverse. Public relations is a real direct, natural progression from journalism. Corporate communications, telling stories within companies. And then, of course, the wedding world, portraits, weddings, headshots. I mean, that's why I came up with the idea of the program, because in today's world, it's so important. It's crucial to diversify, because if you just stay too narrow, you're going to get crushed out there.
You're going to lose opportunities. And as much as we love the programs about art, I think this is one of the most important panels we can have, because running a business is what this is all about. Most people here are running their businesses in their own local neighborhoods. And so whatever nuggets you guys have in the way of teaching us all and inspiring us all with what you do is so important. So
one quick thing, Michael, about that. I was a photographer in business. It took me ages to become a business person in photography.
Well, I would say
Really big
then
difference.
maybe the first bit of advice is to become educated in business, to get a degree in business over a degree in photography if you want to run a photography business.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, they're both equally important, but I want to start with you, Julie, but why does it matter, that, you diversify your offerings when you're running your business?
Well, I think it's, and I pose this question, and it is an obvious one. Why does it matter? Mainly revenue. But also, it allows you to ebb and flow with the change in your environment. So, for example, if the economy tanks, housing market crashes, things begin to happen, companies go out of business, stuff happens that's out of your control. And when you can diversify and bring in different streams of revenue, you can then, if something falls short, you can then analyze the market and go, okay, what's going to take off? What's going to be the next direction for me? And you'll already have your foot in that water and be able to use your contacts, use your connections, and build your business in that direction should you need to. There's nothing more stressful than, as an entrepreneur, having the phone not ring. And so if you can make that happen when everyone else is crumbling, you're going to be 1 foot ahead of the game. And just having revenue that's coming in from multiple streams gives you that sense of comfort of, okay, if all else fails in this arena, I can go over to this one and be okay. And then while I'm in this arena, I can put a Band-Aid on this one, try to figure out where it's going next, diversify in that market, and then go back to it when it's healed and is healthy again. So I think it's really a place of comfort and confidence in your business. It's going to give you a lot of confidence to move forward, and it's just fun. You get sick of shooting the same thing over and over again, left and right. I mean, sometimes I have a baby come in and I'm like, oh my goodness, another baby. And so when you get to, what would you say?
They're everywhere.
They're everywhere. They're
Congratulations, by the way. I mean, subject. Okay.
right? But yeah, so to have the chance to do something else that opens your mind creatively. I mean, I do some product photography for companies locally in town, and it's so nice to change gears sometimes. It really is.
You have a gorgeous studio.
Thank
That studio can photograph people. You can do
I
product
can do
photography.
anything.
Utilizing it, and I've seen it. It's really nice and big and so much that you can do there. Cliff, take it away too. Same question. Where do you consciously look? How to become successful in diversification?
Well, a lot of my corporate communications stemmed from my contacts when I was a photojournalist with the Philadelphia Inquirer, because when you're doing these stories, these business features, these other types of stories, you meet a lot of public relation people, you meet a lot of communications people, and they understand that you have an understanding of what press needs are to be met with various corporations. So being able to provide the corporations with things to hand to newspapers, hopefully the way I approach those assignments will get them run in newspapers and magazines in order to get press and public relations for those companies. The other thing that have found that works is reaching out to vice presidents of corporate communications and reaching out, give them a sense of my experience, letting them know my background, and they're more apt to reach out to me because of that experience. Then I also have 1,200 weddings behind me, and that's a portrait foundation for a client base as well. And a lot of the work has sort of found me, which has been really more of a stroke of luck than anything else. But it's really difficult out there, and being a little bit aggressive, being assertive. Assertive is a better word than aggressive.
Right.
You might get rejected a lot, and you have to learn how to take rejection. But if you want to build a client base, rejection's a part of it. So
I was just going to say along those same lines, it's not only having that assertiveness, but also keeping your mind open to the next person you meet who could help you diversify.
yeah, the networking element.
Yeah, there's always like 1 degree of separation between the client who knows the president of some company who's going to help you diversify into commercial work. So just keeping your eyes and ears open for those opportunities is another thing. If you're aware, then you'll grab the opportunity when it comes and be assertive.
And sometimes there's opportunities within those opportunities. With the stuff I just did for Epson, which I was working with Shaquille, I didn't realize, and they didn't realize, some of the things for social media that I was able to get them from behind the scenes. A lot of it was just going to be these, if you go to Staples and you see these big 7'2" standouts of Shaq, those are my studio images for them. But then they also used a lot of behind the scenes stuff for the commercial stills, and a lot of Z6 stuff, silent mode and all that stuff. But I didn't even know, and they didn't even know, what kind of material they were going to need. Now they have to feed the social media beast.
Right.
So that was another element that they didn't even know they needed. So you can provide your clients with things they didn't even know they needed.
So did you see what he did there, dropping Shaquille O'Neal? Did you notice that? He had to
yeah.
slide that.
I noticed that.
Shaquille's my buddy Shaquille.
Name
He dropped
drop.
it in.
Yeah, my buddy.
So Tamara, I mean, when I met you, you had educational materials.
guy.
You had your redefined show.
I'd already met Shaq.
You'd already met Shaq at
Yeah.
that point, yeah.
Wait, I want to
And I'd seen you in so many different places, but can you diversify too much? Is there a danger in diluting your business by being too much
Yeah,
for your
it's a great
clients?
question.
And so, what's important to consider in marketing, follow up with that as well, in marketing, when it comes to diversification.
Yeah, I mean, a few things. I think one of the questions that you just mentioned, is it possible to diversify too much? The point of diversification is multifold. It's protecting your cash flow. It's having multiple sources of revenue when things ebb and flow, but also when your interests ebb and flow and change. And for me, I have found that the more highly engaged I am with my subjects, the more things I am excited about trying and doing. And so one of the things that I have found has protected me a little bit in having a wide amount of interest, like I think a lot of you probably do, a lot of different passions, is trying to be very minimal about what the offering is. So if I am photographing portraits, for instance, it's this. This is the actual package. This is what we're doing. This is how the sales session goes. These are the only things we're offering. And then we're out. Keeping it very clean and very simple allows me to stay focused in one of the areas versus having 20 things to focus on each area, and there's 20 of them. Another thing that I think has been very helpful is just getting help. I mean, emotionally, we all need
Help.
to get help, but also in your business, having somebody kind of be in charge of certain areas can, again, free you up to be a lot more interested in using your talent while the revenue is still being safe.
Julia, would you add to that?
Yeah, I think it can be very challenging to market to multiple ideal clients. When you diversify, the target client you're after is going to change, or at least vary somewhat. And having to constantly market to multiple ideal clients can be very draining, cost a lot of money, and cost you an incredible amount of time. So I think Tamara's right, and keeping it laser focused is what will help. When I've diversified, like I do commercial work, social media branding packages for my clients. I live in a town where there's entrepreneurs everywhere. Everybody moves to Bend because they have an online business. They work, you can't make a living there, but it's an amazing place to live. And so everybody goes there to, or they telecommute. They fly out of Bend to go to work in San Francisco or whatever. And so they have their own businesses and they need to feed the social media beast. And so my family clients and baby clients know that I do this work, and they're like, "Oh, I need branding package for my my whatever business. It can be my recipe blog that I have online. Can you come shoot me in my kitchen for my social media?" Of course. And so I was forced into, social media content, branding, commercial photography because my clients were saying, I need to feed the social media beast. And not a lot of photographers are working with that kind of content. It is so lucrative, and you don't necessarily have to advertise for it. If you have a client base already who has a need, fill it. And then it's a stream of revenue that you're not killing yourself to market over.
Yeah.
So,
Tamara, how does
Excellent.
coffee play into your business?
How does
Weird
coffee?
question, right? But you've diversified that way as well, the front end of your studio, right?
Right. I am obsessed with coffee. I'm not sure why it isn't a mandatory product in our lives every
you
day.
need to come to the Northwest.
I know.
Yes,
I know. Well, I'm
snobs.
trying to bring it. So I live in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we had decided to move our studio closer to where we lived. We wanted to be able to have the dream of walking and biking to work and everything. And we found a space that had what we initially thought of as an opening for a coffee cart. And then we started really brainstorming it. And long story short, it's now a 2,000 square foot cafe and coffee shop and market. It's Cocoa Bean. You can check it out, Cocoa Bean Cafe. But see, a little diversification revenue plug right there for everybody who's in Chapel Hill, North Carolina right now and wants a coffee.
Nice plug.
But what I have found is photography was a really naturally connected to something like that, an endeavor like that. Everything Julia's talking about in terms of social media and imagery and marketing materials, I was able to do for that, you know, and be able to use imagery on the walls and have, you know, attention paid to the studio through what we show in the coffee shop. It's just a symbiotic, interesting thing, and I get tons and tons of coffee.
I imagine that there are a lot of people out there that are running business by themselves. Starting with you, Cliff, I want to dig into the depth of who's in your business. Do you have a business manager? Do you have a studio manager? How deep does it go, and how much of it do you do on your own?
Before the digital era, I did everything on my own. Speaking to clients, whatever marketing there was, and that was really networking and going to see catering directors and shaking hands and kissing babies with anybody that can get me wedding work and portrait work and corporate communications and art directors and all that kind of stuff. So it was all me for a very long time. I was even up until 3 o'clock in the morning numbering albums, you know, the prints on the back of it, you know, 1A, 1B, 1CD, I mean, till 3 o'clock in the morning. So I was working 15 hours a day. Once digital came into effect, I had a studio manager. I had a studio manager ever since 2005 when I went digital. It's been a godsend. All I do, I shoot, I download, I back up, and I cull, and I talk to people. Once the wedding day comes, or that portrait session is over, or the corporate shoot is over, I'll cull, back up, and then everything is handed over to my studio manager to process everything in terms of workflow, get the galleries up, get the downloadable galleries to the clients very quickly, and I am literally done and on the golf course because I don't spend my time behind a desk processing.
So when Epson calls, you turn it over to your studio manager.
When Epson calls, I do everything, and when I'm done with the shoot, then it gets turned over to my studio manager.
So you then take control of certain aspects of your...
Everything up until the actual shoot. Once I do the shoot, then I turn everything over, and she manages it. Her name is Heather Billick, and she's a godsend. She's got a very high photographic IQ. She printed film for 10 years. She knows color. She knows file management.
Far more important than Shaquille O'Neal in your life. Tamara,
well, you know, Tamara knows him a lot better than I do.
I want to roll with all of you on this because I think it's such an important thing for people to understand. And then advice along the way on how this single person running their own business, what's the next step to getting a studio manager? How do you call that? How do you figure all that out?
Yeah, I mean, I single-handedly credit the you know, what I've been able to enjoy in this photography career with getting help quickly, like early. And so I currently have a studio manager who is operating a whole bunch of things right now. We have a coffee shop management team in charge of everything there. We have a team of people who help with a lot of the things we need for our nonprofit. I think if I look at kind of staff, it's like 20, 25 people, but all in varying degrees doing different things. And so the first time I needed help, I had a photography assistant who was just helping out on shoots and then started taking calls. And it was a very clear thing. I could only afford to hire her for $8 an hour for 8 hours a week. That's what we started with. And just say, let's see if you can make it till next Monday. Let me see if I don't mess anything up. And then over time that grew and grew. And honestly, one of the biggest things I've learned is getting really aware of how many things I do very poorly. Mm-hmm. There are so many things I don't do well or don't have the patience for or can't follow through on. And I find people who do that so well, and I'm in awe of their efforts, and they make everything better.
Julia?
I'm a little different. I started off, of course, on my own, and then quickly realized that to shoot a baby session, it was easier to have 4 hands rather than 2. So my nanny, essentially, who helped me with my child at the time, was helping me with sessions as well. And she did grow into a full-time studio management role, but then when she decided to leave, I really kept it small. I have my wonderful Beth, who does all my retouching and video production for our education membership site. And then I have a very part-time scheduler. She places orders. She makes sure orders are on track and stuff like that. So the minor detail stuff she does, but having a full-time studio manager, I just realized I didn't really need it. I was okay, and I actually enjoyed the freedom and the lack of responsibility of having to make sure someone's livelihood was cared for. And in essence, that's a backdoor diversification strategy. You know, if you're committed to paying a high overhead with a bunch of employees, you're committed to that, and that's income that you have to bring in. You can't just let people go. I mean, you can, but you don't want to hire somebody and 2 weeks later fire them, you know, when you're not ready, and then hire them back and then fire them and hire. It's just not right.
Yeah.
You're responsible for someone's livelihood. And in the beginning, when I hired someone, I said, okay, we're on a 3-month trial because I might not be able to handle this, you know, just kind of like you. And it worked, and I made it happen. But for me, I wanted a lighter load. And everything is so automated and streamlined in our studio that I don't really need someone to babysit it all the time. A lot of the times I found my studio manager, she was sitting there twiddling her thumbs, not doing a lot. And I'm like, it's because everything was so automatic and automated. She didn't have to do anything. So I'm like, why am I paying someone to do that? So that's, you know, I think there's different ways to go about it, and everybody has a different mindset and desire and a need. You know, but people do give you time. When you pay people, it increases the number of hours you have in a day.
Right.
Everybody only has 24 hours, so you can always buy more time with another person. And you just have to assess your business, break down the numbers, and decide, okay, can I sacrifice money to gain more time? And sometimes that's incredibly profitable, and other times it's a waste of money. So you just kind of have to analyze it on your own.
You sort of headed in this direction. I'm going to start with you, Tamara. I think failure breeds success. And
Well, why would you start with me on that one?
I know it. We can start with Cliff because he probably has more answers. But this is where I ask you to somewhat expose yourself. What were the greatest failures, and how did you overcome them in business?
Greatest failures. Well, one of my biggest ones was burning out 3 years into business. I've shared this story before, but the short version is I was trying to do everything myself, but also not being aware of when to say no. And also trying to oversell what I could do, so then later trying to fix it when I did it poorly. And I mean, that'll get, I don't know if anybody else has ever had that experience where you just dive all in and you want to do any opportunity you have that's offered to you. And then you burn yourself right out of the business. So one of the biggest mistakes I made was waiting too long to get help. And when I finally did, I had a very, you know, again, everything Julia was talking about, this kind of, I had to be careful about what I could offer because of what I could pay and what I could guarantee the next week, which is why it was a very slow ramp up. So that was one of the many, many failures. I could go on.
You don't have to say them all. I just
yeah. Well, that was just one.
Cliff, where did you trip and fall, and how did you recover? How did you stand back up?
I would say the time management with regard to trying to do everything all by myself, especially early on. I just mentioned I was up until 3 o'clock in the morning. There was no reason for me to design these albums. I didn't know that I could delegate, and I think that was a huge mistake. But touching upon just this whole subject, when you're hiring someone to be the face of your business as a studio manager, it is a really, really important decision to be made because they're going to touch every single client that comes through your business. Mm-hmm. So they damn well better have, the articulation, the respect, and the abilities to communicate and give the best customer service. So the other thing I remember, a big mistake, many, many years ago, there was a client that had asked, I had missed, I'll call it an Uncle Bob photo. There was a relative that was at a wedding, and I didn't know it. And then they said, "Where's Uncle Bob?" And I'm like, "I don't have a picture of Uncle Bob. I didn't know." So they got really upset. So now I ask each and every single client to give me a list of very important people that aren't so obvious. So you learn. That's one of the things where I've erred. You have to find out what's important. My point to this is customer service is as or more important than the photographs themselves. That's something that I have built into my business. If I'm wrong, I own it. Every mistake that I've made, I've owned it to my clients. And then you build a stronger loyalty and a stronger brand because they're looking at you and they're saying, wow, he made a mistake, he owned it, let's continue to use him because we're not afraid that he's going to take advantage of us, that type of thing. So
really
you're going to make mistakes, just own it.
Totally, and it really click along those lines of customer service. I truly believe that customer service makes a client feel something about your business. And that feeling is what they'll remember every time they see the images. So how do you want your client to feel every time they look at the image you created for them? You want them to feel something amazing. So that service you provide, the brand you produce, the brand you kind of inject into them as they work with you, what impression do you want that to be? Because every time they look at those images, they're going to think of that. And that's why I think with Cliff, customer service is so much more important than the images. It really is.
In many years past, I'd been to some of the panel discussions, and a woman brought up things that she does in her community to kind of give back, and personal projects. This went so fast, and we're down to about 5 minutes left, but I want to finish off with one last question about, do you have personal projects or special things you do within the community to bring awareness, not to just to your business, but take care of people within your community? So start with you, Julia.
I mean, my biggest personal project is print competition, to raise awareness, particularly for issues that mean something to me. I suffered from, typically they're issues surrounding my business, but I suffered from postpartum depression pretty badly after my child was born, and so I wanted to design a piece that would speak to that and help other mothers feel like they weren't alone. Mental health is something that we don't talk about enough in this country, and I think it's a lot of the reason we have issues. And mindset is so important for each and every one of us to stay in that. We were just talking about this back there, to keep in a positive place, because what happens in your mind truly manifests in everything that you do and everything that happens to you. And so by being able to create a personal project that allows women to understand that they're not alone and that they can talk about this and be positive, impacts them in great ways. So is it something that is specifically to my community? Not necessarily, but the impression, the feedback that you get from doing a personal project and people coming up to you and saying, wow, your image really spoke to me because I've dealt with that too, is incredibly rewarding. And being able to I'm going to end here, but being able to just create for the sake of creating is always healthy for the brain. It's always good for you, and it helps your brain diversify, and we all need that.
Tamara, I know you work on so many different things.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing in the world is Beautiful Together, our nonprofit, and we focus on supporting children waiting for families. And in fact, my talk at 2:30 is all about ways we can use our photography for personal projects and to inspire ourselves and to do things that we think matter. So to me, being able to work with this, talent that so many of us share and apply it in a way that means more to me than anything else I'm doing is about the ultimate in terms of diversification for me.
Cliff, talk about your business and how it goes beyond the business.
I would have to say that I'm kind of starved for personal projects, admitting to you guys that I need to incorporate that a little bit more. A couple weeks ago, there's a prominent comedian in our area. I Instagrammed it a week ago, and it made me feel really good to make this image for this man. Long story short, he's in a wheelchair now. He had a tragic blood vessel burst in his spine. He's a comedian in the Philadelphia area for like 40 years. He just went on stage for the first time after his accident, and I documented that. And that's kind of my roots, and being able to do that made me feel really good to document that. He just asked for that photo, and it made him really feel good. We have to understand that we're able to do those things for people. I need to incorporate more of that, and that's something that I have every intention on doing. I love landscape work. I love taking trips, road trips, and just stopping and making pictures. But for the past 25 years, 22 years, I've been shooting so many weddings. When you're doing that every week, it's tough to incorporate personal projects. Jay Maisel and I had a conversation, and we talked about art or money. He found out I had kids, and he's like, well, the heck with the art, make the money. And I need to incorporate more of that personal side of things. That's a big drawback in my career right now. I need more.
Well, it's good. Listen, it's great. We're all thinking about it. This went so fast. I wish this was a 2-hour session because there's so much great stuff coming out of it. I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your experiences. Guys, thank you for being here and tuning in. I've learned a ton. I have never run a business before, but it's obviously not the easiest thing to do. And sustaining within the industry with everyone out there in competition has got to be difficult. So thank you, Cliff, Tamara, and
Thank
Julia
you.
for sharing.
Thank
As
you.
Tamara said, she's going to be coming up later. We'll see programs from Julia. And Cliff has already done his program here, so you are free to go back to Philadelphia. But thank you guys for your time. we're going to make a transition
Thank you.
to this really cool cat, Sean LeBlanc, who's going to come up and speak for us next. We're going to change over the stage, get his program loaded up, so stick around.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.